King Charles and see what they think about him. But I was talking to people as they were walking along. Some people here from New York happened to just be here on holiday, and they decided they needed to come and pay their respects. They want to pay their respects to Her Majesty. So I think that they probably are willing and ready to see what King Charles is going to be about, what kind of vibe they're going to get from him. But I do think you just cannot mistake the fact that people seem to be coming to almost like the wake of a family member. They are rushing here and scurrying here almost as if they are summoned to go and pay their respects. So I think first and foremost, that's what you're going to see. And then we're going to see how they react to him as we see him do those walkabouts.
And that's the incredible thing about this moment is he's being received by the people, but he's also mourning the loss of his mother and helping the royal family as they begin this long duration of royal mourning in this country.
Yeah, he's now head of a family. He's got to lead. I think today will be a chance for us to see the kind of king he's going to want to be. He's going to want to change the respect I think a lot of people have for him into the love that they felt for Queen Elizabeth. It's no good trying to compare him to her. That's impossible. We'll never have another monarch like her. But I think that he'll want very, very much to turn the respect I think a lot of people do have for him into that love, and also just kind of figure out what his kingship looks like. You know, he was a campaigning Prince of Wales. There wasn't really a job of the Prince of Wales before. It was really just a kind of waiting in line to be king or queen. But now the Prince of Wales has taken on this job as being a kind of campaigner on the arts, on conservation, on ecology, on the climate. Today will be about telling people, I know my job has changed. I know I've got to rise above that. I still find those things important, but now I'm king.
How he will embrace the British people, the people of the Commonwealth. James, Deborah, thank you as we stand by to listen to King Charles III for the first time addressing the public since the Queen's death. Let's listen.
I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration, an example to me and to all my family. And we owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe to their mother, for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example. Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today. Alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries where the Queen was head of state, in the Commonwealth and across the world, a deep sense of gratitude for the more than 70 years in which my mother, as Queen, served the people of so many nations. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, she pledged in a broadcast from Cape Town to the Commonwealth to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples. That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. In her life of service, we saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign. And as every member of my family can testify, she combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people. I pay tribute to my mother's memory, and I honor her life of service. I know that her death brings great sadness to so many of you, and I share that sense of loss beyond measure with you all. When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times. In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained and must remain constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. My life will, of course, change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much. As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. In a little over a week's time, we will come together as a nation, as a Commonwealth, and indeed a global community, to lay my beloved mother to rest. In our sorrow, let us remember and draw strength from the light of her example. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
And there you have it, King Charles III in his first address to the Commonwealth, the British people, and people all over the world mourning the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. A deeply moving and personal address in his first speech to the Commonwealth. Of course, talking about the Queen, and at the very end there, he said, "To my Mama, thank you. Thank you for your love, your devotion, her 70 years of service to the Commonwealth." He thanked her at the very beginning of this and went on to speak of what she witnessed as Queen, how she helped usher the royal family through turbulent times and helped modernize the royal family, with a strong indication that that's where it will head with him as well in this next chapter. He talked about his beloved Camilla, who will become his queen consort, his son, Prince William, who will now become Prince of Wales. Kate will be Princess of Wales. This is the first time that title will be used since the death of Princess Diana. He talked about Harry and Meghan and said, overseas, I want to speak of my love for them as they continue to build their life back in the U.S. And again, he ended by saying this final journey for the Queen, his mother, as she joins his father, and thanking them both for their lifetime of service. Extraordinarily moving here at Buckingham Palace. Again, we know that he recorded this message just a short time ago, having met with the people outside Buckingham Palace, and I gather certainly fueled by them. Deeply moving in what he said today.
Absolutely, and you just felt the power of his mother, I think, as he sat there. He really felt her very strongly. He spoke about faith. We know how important that was for the Queen, and it's clearly important for Charles. But he's showing us that he's going to be different to the man that we've known for the last 73 years. He knows that he's got to move away from some of the issues that he's championed, and now he really is head of a family, leading a family, probably a much more slimmed down royal family, you know, through whatever the future holds. But it was a very, very moving speech, and I think gives us a glimpse of the kind of king he'll be.
We have a Prince of Wales and a Princess of Wales, William and Kate.
And pretty quickly, too, because he didn't get that title until a little bit later after his mom had her coronation. I thought it was also very moving, and I was struck by how he was trying to balance tradition. He made it clear that he would still be sort of traditional, so for those who really like and look for the devotion to church and faith and all of those things, he spoke about that. But he sort of signaled, too, that he's moving into the modern era in some ways, the way he talked about his family and the way he talked about Camilla. You sort of got the impression that he wanted to make it clear that he's going to be his own person. He respects and wants to give, you know, all the due credit to his mother, but now this is King Charles's reign, and I think he was sort of grabbing a hold of it.
I thought it was interesting. He talked about being married to Camilla for 17 years now. I think many people will say, wow, it's been 17 years since the marriage. Of course, the love of his life and the world dissected the marriage to Princess Diana, of course, eventually with the woman he loved from the very beginning, Camilla. And she will now be his queen consort. And as we all remember, in the weeks before the Queen's death, she talked about the support she hopes the Commonwealth, the British people, the people of the world will give to Charles and Camilla. And
you would know more than I do, James, about this, but you get the impression that people are warming to Camilla, too, over the years. You know, you've seen her cheeky side, the little asides, the little jokes from time to time when you've seen them in public. So you get the impression not only does he want to just sort of bring her along to support him and to be right there, but also with the hope, too, that people are accepting of her now. And I think it might be a turn of a page.
And they remember the Queen and Philip, how she called him her rock. And they know that Charles needs that rock. Camilla is very down to earth. She's very funny. She grounds Charles, I think, and I think people here are ready for King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla.
I also think that families around the world have all been tested in their own ways, and this is a family that's been tested, but in a much more public way. And the fact that they've stayed together, they married, the Queen had this wish for them, and now we know today, officially, we knew this going in, but now we've heard it from King Charles III, Camilla will be his Queen Consort. I want to bring in our contributors also watching this with us for the first time, this address from King Charles, Victoria Murphy, and former Communications and Press Secretary to the Queen, Elsa Anderson, joining us from Windsor Castle. Elsa, I want to start with you. I know this has been a deeply moving 48 hours for you, having worked with the Queen for so long. I gather the Queen would be very proud of her son, King Charles, and how he presented himself in his first address to the Commonwealth.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think she would have been hugely proud of him. I listened to that address and I had a lump in my throat and I felt tears in my eyes. I think he hit the right tone. He was emotional. He's quite an emotional person anyway. I think he was empathetic. He said everything he should say, and I think the public, the nation, the world will warm to him even more.
Victoria, what moved you most?
Well, I think we've just witnessed history, really, and I think it's hard to overstate the importance of this moment for Prince Charles, for King Charles today. He knows that many people have said and will say many things about his mother, but these are the words that people were waiting to hear, that the public wanted from him. And for me, I think really it was a speech in two parts, which really reflects the situation that we were now in. It was a tribute. He spoke about his mother, he spoke about her legacy, he spoke about what she had achieved. He also spoke emotionally about his feelings about her as a mother and his feelings about her achievement. But then he also spoke about the future. He provided clarity on certain things. He spoke about the person that he wants to be as king. He provided clarity on how he sees himself in the role and the fact that he also, like his mother did, sees this as a lifelong duty. He provided clarity on things like titles moving forward and really gave us this sense of taking control of a situation and providing a focal point, which was what we very much needed.
We're looking at extraordinary pictures outside Buckingham Palace. You can see the crowds that have been gathered all day here in London. And look at the top of Buckingham Palace there. We know the Union flag has been raised again to the top. Full staff for the new king. It will stay like this for the next 24 to 26 hours or so to recognize the fact that he is King Charles III. Tomorrow it will be formally announced as they continue to roll out what had been planned for many, many years. That flag will remain at full mast until 26 hours from now, when it will come back down for the continuing honoring and remembering of Queen Elizabeth around the world as she makes her long and final journey home to her resting place. Elsa, I wanted to ask you, given your closeness to the family, what you witnessed for so many years, the world knows then Prince Charles as someone who was the longest heir to the throne in British history. 3 years old, he became the heir. An awkward young man. He described writing from boarding school what it was like to be the Queen's son, the heir to the throne. He talked about difficult times growing up, how others treated him. He was tested in midlife, too, with his, of course, marriage to Diana on the world stage. And ultimately found his love, Camilla. They got married, and I was struck by the way he handled himself after the death of his father, Prince Philip. The way he led that procession stoically, but with real honor for his father. And I wonder if the British people studied his every move during that time, and if it's truly helped usher in this new chapter.
I think you're absolutely right. I think he has grown into the king he has become. And the man he has become. And I think he has done that through experience, through nurturing by the Queen and Prince Philip, and also by the love and support and devotion of the Duchess, now Queen Consort. I think people will look at him today, and we've seen the reaction from the crowds outside Buckingham Palace when he did his walkabout, and there is a real genuine love and affection. And I think that will just grow.
Elsa, thank you. Elsa and Victoria, stay with us here as we continue our coverage. And I should mention the royal standard above Buckingham Palace. The Union flag will rise tomorrow when it becomes official for those 26 hours, as I mentioned a short time ago. Listen to this moment here with Prince Charles and the people who are congratulating him.
Love you, King Charles. We lost your mom.
There is a moment we witnessed when they spontaneously began to sing and say, "God Save the King," of course, their new national anthem.
Save our gracious King, God save our King.
Extraordinarily powerful scene. This was before the speech he just gave, greeting supporters and mourners outside Buckingham Palace, not only honoring and remembering Queen Elizabeth II. And think about this, more than 80% of the British people grew up, were born only having known Queen Elizabeth as their sovereign. This is the first time they would welcome someone new, though he is known, his title changes, King Charles III, and that powerful moment, God Save the King. Just an example of one of the small ways there'll be a cultural shift here, but King Charles signaling some of the larger ways that there'll be a shift. And you could see it in that crowd, in the faces of the crowd, Deborah, the diversity along that line of people. And King Charles said people of all backgrounds will be embraced by this royal family.
I think so, David. And I think also one thing that's striking to me is that there are images now of King Charles. We have to get used to saying King Charles, that people will kind of store in their minds. This image of him walking around and looking so comfortable in the crowd. You know, many people have talked about the Queen being sort of the grandmother, right? And he was this stuffy uncle. But I remember those images of, say, for instance, during Harry and Meghan's wedding, when he walked Meghan down the aisle in this very generous, sweet, loving way. I think there are going to be images now of King Charles that people will store away and think that, you know, he maybe is not such a stuffy guy after all. They're seeing some warmth from him.
You could definitely see warmth today, not only in his face, but in the physicality of the moment, the way he reached out, much like his mother did, and began that tradition. One thing that we did learn today before we go here is that at Balmoral, we know then Prince Charles made it to his mother's side along with Princess Anne. The other siblings made it, but afterward, along with Princes William and Harry. And I was moved that, obviously, he mentioned William and Kate and their new role, Prince and Princess of Wales, but also, of course, as you would expect, but it was lovely to hear that he mentioned Harry and Meghan and their life back in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're not working members of the royal family any longer, but they are still in the family. And you know, the death of a loved one is a family moment, and he wanted to mention them, and I thought that was really beautiful. And I have to say, maybe unexpected, given what's been going on recently. We know specifically that Charles has had an issue with Harry. That relationship itself has suffered. So I thought it was very, very moving that he felt that he needed to say something in that moment.
And in particular, we know Harry and his relationship with his grandmother, they were also close to their grandmother, the Queen, but Harry has talked extensively about the fact that she was the grandmother of a nation, not just his grandmother as well. Deborah and James, thank you both so much. And Elsa and Victoria, our thanks to you as well. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. And of course, I'll be back with the entire team for a special edition of World News Tonight. And then later this Friday evening, a 2-hour edition of 2020 that begins at 9 Eastern right here from London. I'm David Muir in London. I'll see you for World News Tonight. Until then, good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.